What's up, guys? This is going to be a pretty simple ramble. This one is just on some very basic rotation efficiency with CFOP, basically what order you should prioritize solving your F2L pairs in. Before I get started, I do want to preface this with basically saying you shouldn't choose F2L pairs based on where they go. You should just do the first thing you see and execute it, and if it means filling up the front right slot earlier than not, because that's the best way to do that pair, then so be it. However, when you have the option to do like a Y or Y prime rotation before or during an F2L solution, it would be wise to build the better habit now. So that's pretty much what I'm going to talk about. So let's take this cube for example. So here we have all four slots misoriented, and let's say this is the first pair I see. So there's a few ways I could do this. I could rotate here, so do Y prime, solve the pair like that, or I could do a Y rotation and solve the pair like that. You can say whatever you want about lefty moves maybe being slower than righty moves, but then my suggestion there would just be get better at turning with your left hand, because that's kind of a big part of CFOP. Like, I don't really know what else to tell you. If you can't turn with your left hand, you're just going to be limiting yourself, and you might need to do like some 2-gen lefty drills and things like that to get your left hand up to par. But yeah, basically, this is a case where you have the choice, and it is better to fill up the back left slot versus the front right slot. So now that I've basically said that, I'm going to give you my quote-unquote, I guess like my little system for it, and the system is based on the premise that you're a righty-dominant solver. If you're lefty-dominant, then just mirror everything I'm saying. I'm not going to explain it in lefty because there's not enough lefty cubers. So when you're a right-hand dominant solver, you don't really tunnel vision the cube. You're not really looking at like this, at least I hope you're not. It's usually a little bit more like this, so you can see a little bit of the right side. And as such, the most visible slots are, the front right is very, very visible, meaning you don't want it filled because there's good information to see there. There's also a bit of info here. There's a little bit of a blind spot on the left, but you can usually see it pretty quickly by doing that. The back right slot, very similar to the front left, maybe slightly worse, but not enough for me to really care. And there's even more of a blind spot back there. So, and then lastly, the back left is going to be like a complete blind spot for a righty dominant solver. So in other words, the order you want to fill your slots in, should you have the choice to fill one over the other by doing just a simple rotation change, you want to fill up back left as soon as possible. I think a very powerful technique is when planning first pair, trying to force back left to be filled if you can help it. That can be a really powerful technique. And then when it comes to front left and back right, they're pretty similar. I think filling back right before front left is slightly better, but not by a whole lot, and that's just because, you know, doing this to check this blind spot is a little easier than this. As in, like, it's less hand motion and therefore faster. And then front right, if you have to fill it, you know, fill it, but, you know, you're almost definitely going to be rotating, especially if your first pair is in front right and you fill front right. I've kind of noticed for myself that my, you know, solves, if I fill front right slot first, it can really affect my flow for the rest of the solve, and I almost always just instinctually rotate one way or another based on what I'm seeing, just because, like, it's just not a good position to be in. So yeah, if you see a pair like this, you would want to fill back left first, and then something like this, you know, filling front left, it's not too bad. It's actually pretty good, because then your last two pairs are both on the right. You could argue that having both on the front is a little better, and that you would want to fill this pair next, but if you don't see this first, like I said before, it's not worth it to be like, oh, I see this and I know how to do it really easily. Oh, but filling back right is like 2% better, so maybe I should just do that instead. So that's kind of not what I'm getting at. And the other thing I want to mention is that, although I do think you might want to fill BR slightly sooner than FL, the nice thing about having your last two slots being on right is that sometimes you can get a 2-gen finish, which can be pretty nice. So like here I'd probably do this pair and then can just go force a dot because I'm silly. But yeah, you get the idea. I've got some other cubes, for example, here. So this one, again, 2 slots filled. For righty dominant solvers, this, it's like a little bit worse than this, because again, like, this isn't as much of a blind spot as this, because it's just a longer rotation, but it's really not a huge deal. What am I doing? There we go. So yeah, bottom line, if you're a righty dominant solver, you want to fill back left as soon as possible, and you want to be hesitant about filling front right too soon. After you've done 2 F2L pairs, that's the other thing I was going to mention, so we'll just mess up the slots a little. Yeah, so after you've done first 2 pairs, I'll show the diagonal case in a sec, but assuming you've rotated properly so you don't have both your front slots filled or both your right slots filled, like that's the main thing you want to avoid. In my opinion, look ahead at this point in the solve is really, really easy for a CFOP solver, especially if you're very, very comfortable with your F2L solutions. Go watch my initial ramble on why 99% of look ahead videos suck. I keep telling people to watch it, but it's because it's just that good. Like, please internalize the lessons there. I don't want to have to, I don't know, make the video again and then hope that one takes off. But yeah, basically, if you've got 2 F2L pairs solved, we'll talk about the diagonal case in a sec, but if you've got them adjacently solved and you filled up both of the left and both of the back, even if you're like a 11 to 12 second solver, you should be able to do your last 2 pairs without really pausing, in my opinion. Because you can just see, I don't know, like these 2, and then there's only so many pieces. The only blind spot you have with the 2 on right is there, which isn't that bad, and you can see everything else, and then here you have that, which is an even easier blind spot. So in my opinion, you shouldn't be pausing for last 2 pairs in these cases. And you can just, wait, what am I doing? There we go. That's a crap ZB, by the way. I probably need something better there. So for the diagonal slot case, this one's a little bit interesting. I just wanted to throw it in at the end. Again, this goes a bit back to just visibility and blind spots. So for a righty dominant solver, because you're slightly slanted like this, you have a complete blind spot here, but you can see the entirety of one pair. Whereas if you're over here, you basically, you have a partial blind spot there and a partial blind spot there. So you have to rotate a little bit like that, a little bit like that maybe, whereas if you're here, it's like that. So I can't really decide for myself which of those 2 is the lesser of 2 evils, if I'm being completely honest. I feel like this one is slightly better because having 2 half blind spots that are not too far away seems nice. And the other thing is, if you're in this position, there's a good chance you could fill up front right first, which basically guarantees you have to do a rotation next, whereas here, that's less so the case. And then the other thing I want to mention is, like I said before, once you have 2 F2L pairs filled, for the most part, you should be able to have perfect look ahead for the last 2. For the diagonal slot case, this is a little bit less true, just depending on the cases you get. See how this edge is trapped here? If you're in this position, this really affects things. Obviously you can see, all these pieces of blue, so the piece has to be there, but you don't necessarily know it's flipped unless you have very high-level EO recognition, which I don't. Full disclosure. What else was I going to say? Yeah, so, and if there's more pieces stuck, so say this is, I don't know, these 2 are down here or something. If you have something like this and you're in I don't know, this position, it can be a bit hard to look ahead. You're not really going to look ahead until the last second. You would just see those pop up there, and then you would, and then you'd be able to finish from there. But yeah, if you can just internalize that methodology, so if you're a righty dominant solver, fill up BL ASAP, fill up BR or FL soon after. Maybe do them first, but try to rotate in such a way, basically that your last 2 pairs don't end up being in the back or in the left. And also, don't try to actively avoid diag slots. That's the thing I really wanted to say. Don't try to actively avoid diag slots, and don't actively try to force solving a certain slot when it's just not the right idea. A good rule of thumb there, once again, is do the first pair you see, unless the first pair you see is absolute garbage. So yep, that's it for this one. Hope you liked it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.